"Get your ass off my counter!" Mr. Harlan Whitaker's voice echoed throughout the branch. He lunged at Kendra Hollis, grabbing her by the collar of her coat and pulling her to the front of the counter. The withdrawal slip was crumpled between her fingers, as if her attempt to retrieve her own money was an insult. "This isn't a begging line," shouted the manager, loud enough for everyone in the Pacific Shore Bank Central branch in Long Beach to hear. "People like you don't handle real money." Two security guards, Travis and Ronan, immediately appeared. They grabbed the woman's arms and dragged her toward the glass doors. The sound of shoes being dragged on the cold floor mingled with the laughter of customers and the clicks of cell phones raised to film the scene. But Kendra didn't react. Her serene silence and fixed gaze confused everyone. They mistook her calmness for weakness. What no one there knew was that the woman they were evicting wasn't just a retiree. She was at the center of a decision that, in a few days, would determine whether that bank and everyone inside it would still have a future. Before we continue this story, please comment on which city or country you are watching from. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. This is just the first twist in a story that will surprise you. The morning sun streamed through the large windows of the Pacific Shore Bank Central branch in the heart of Long Beach, scattering golden reflections across the granite floor and the elegant silence of the room. Kendra Hollis adjusted her dark sweatshirt over her shoulders, trying to disguise the slight shiver caused by the air conditioning. In her hands, a thin folder held the documents for the closing of the purchase of a small plot of land, a dream she had been building for over 2 decades. The smell of lemon polish mixed with the cold, recycled air filled her nostrils as she walked toward the counter. The line moved slowly, and when Kendra finally reached the window of the young cashier, Mia Langford, the girl's gaze widened in a mixture of surprise and discomfort. "Good morning," Kendra said calmly, sliding her ID and bank card across the counter. "I need to make a larger withdrawal today. It's for closing a real estate deal. It can be in the form of a certified check." Before Mia could answer, the firm sound of expensive shoes echoed through the lobby. It was Mr. Harlan Whitaker, the manager. He appeared with an excessively friendly smile, the kind that humiliates more than it welcomes. "Is there a problem here?" he asked loudly so that everyone in the agency could hear. "No problem," Kendra replied, maintaining a neutral tone. "Just a routine transaction." The manager's eyes slowly scanned her worn sweatshirt, pausing for a moment on the thin briefcase she held carefully. "I see here that your name has been flagged for further verification. We will need to take some steps before releasing this amount." He raised his voice on purpose, and the agency's murmur ceased. People began to pay attention, some leaning discreetly to hear better. "Perhaps you could explain to us the whereabouts of all this money?" he asked. Mia hesitated. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling, torn between following orders and maintaining respect. The air seemed heavier. "I presented my documents and bank details," Kendra replied, with the serenity of someone who has faced a lot in life. "The money is for a deed that will be signed later today." The manager pretended to analyze the ID without actually looking at it. "Internal policy. We need to confirm if you are indeed authorized to move this amount of money." 2 cell phone lights turned on among the customers in line. Others followed. The embarrassment was already public knowledge. Behind the manager, on the granite wall, a bronze plaque displayed the names of the Pacific Shore Bank Foundation's main donors. In third place, the name Kendra Hollis shone brightly, one of the biggest contributors to the social project maintained by the institution itself. The irony almost made her smile, if it weren't for the lump growing in her throat. "Sir," said Kendra, calmly placing both hands on the counter, "I have provided all the necessary identification. I would like you to review it and proceed with the procedure." Harlan's smile vanished like a burnt-out light bulb. Identification isn't everything, Mum. We have security measures in place to avoid suspicious situations. He turned his body to the side, a subtle gesture, but enough to end the conversation. Mia, suspend this transaction until further notice. The young woman's hands trembled, and her gaze wavered between the manager and Kendra, like someone witnessing an injustice but lacking the courage to intervene. A woman in line murmured, "Is this really happening?" More cell phones were raised. More eyes were fixed. Kendra took a deep breath. "Mr. Harlan," she said firmly, "call the central office now." The man maintained a serene expression, but his gaze hardened. A small gesture with his hand, almost imperceptible, triggered security guards Travis and Ronan, who were already approaching. The lobby fell into an awkward silence, broken only by the hum of the fans and the faint beep of the security cameras. The sun, streaming through the glass, cast streaks of light onto the polished floor, revealing particles of dust floating among the people, unseen witnesses to an absurd humiliation. Kendra remained motionless. Her breathing was calm, her gaze fixed, and while the heavy footsteps of the security guards echoed behind her, a single truth pulsed in her mind. She was being treated like a criminal inside the very bank where her name, ironically, shone on the wall as a symbol of trust and generosity. Mr. Harlan Whitaker adjusted his tie, already impeccable, with the satisfaction of someone savoring his own power. "I'm afraid that if you continue causing trouble, we'll have to ask you to leave," he said, in a tone of false courtesy. "We take security very seriously here at the Pacific Shore Bank Central Branch." Mia Langford, the young cashier, had a pale face. Her eyes darted across the computer screen as if searching for a way out that didn't exist. Her fingers even moved toward the phone, but the mere presence of the manager seemed to paralyze her. The sound of the security guard's heavy footsteps drew closer, marking the granite floor like a tense clock. Kendra Hollis didn't turn around. He stood motionless, staring at Harlan, observing every micro-expression that crossed his face, the satisfied glint in his eyes, the restrained smile, the way he straightened his body, eager to watch the scene of humiliation that he himself had orchestrated. "Last chance, Mr. Harlan," Kendra said, her clear voice echoing in the silent lobby. "Call headquarters now." Sunlight streamed through the glass panels, illuminating the bronze plaque behind the manager, where the name Kendra Hollis, platinum-level benefactor of the Pacific Shore Bank Foundation, gleamed like a silent accusation. The footsteps behind her stopped. The reflection of security guard Travis Keene appeared on the polished surface of the counter. Broad shoulders, cold expression, clenched jaw. A man accustomed to obeying, not thinking. "She's refusing to comply with the verification procedures," the manager announced, loud enough for everyone to hear. "She's becoming quite disruptive." "That's not true," Kendra replied, her voice firm and controlled. "I presented my full identification and—" "Madam," Harlan interrupted, raising his voice to drown her out, "if you continue behaving like this, I will be forced to—" "I'm just trying," Kendra began, but he turned to the security guard with a brusque gesture. "Travis, escort this person to the exit. They are disturbing the other customers." Before she could respond, the security guard's strong fingers gripped the fabric of her sweatshirt near her collarbone. The touch was violent. Kendra gasped. He pulled her back, forcing her away from the counter. "Let's go," Travis growled, dragging her roughly. Her heels scraped against the granite floor as she struggled to keep her balance. The briefcase slipped from her hands, scattering the documents across the polished stone. A flash illuminated the room. Someone was filming. The perfect shot. A woman being dragged from her seat. The manager watching with satisfaction. The security guard with his hand still gripping her clothing. "Don't touch me again," Kendra said softly, but with a clarity that cut through the air. The words hung heavy in the silence, but the security guard simply clenched his fist, gathering more of the sweatshirt fabric in his hand. "Then walk," he ordered, pushing her toward the revolving door with unnecessary force. "Wait a minute." The voice emerged from the middle of the line, hoarse, firm, but indignant. It was Victor Hale, a grey-haired gentleman in his 70s. "You can't treat someone like that. That's outrageous." The manager turned around, irritated. "Sir, please remain in your seat. We are dealing with a security matter." "Security?" retorted Victor, taking a step forward. "I've been a customer of this bank for 30 years, and I've never seen anything like it." "So you would also prefer to be asked to leave?" Harlan interrupted coldly and sharply. While the old man hesitated, Travis seized the moment to push Kendra once more. She stumbled, her ankle twisting slightly, almost falling. He managed to brace himself against a velvet support, feeling the cold metal and the burning pain in his fingers. The morning sun flooded the lobby, creating a stark contrast between the elegant gleam of the granite and the grotesque scene unfolding. Harlan's fake smile. Travis's pale face was tense, the audience of customers pressed against the walls, silently filming with their cell phones raised. Mia, behind the cash register, raised her hand, perhaps to intervene, but recoiled at the manager's gaze. Victor also fell silent, though his face showed anger and shame at witnessing it without being able to do anything. Travis pushed Kendra through the revolving door. The glass panels rotated, and in seconds she was outside, under the scorching Long Beach sun. Only then did the security guard release her with a disdainful gesture, as if getting rid of something dirty. She composed herself, straightening her wrinkled clothes. The pulled-up sweatshirt had left the skin of her neck marked and hot. Behind the glass doors, she could see the inside of the agency, the red lights of the cameras flashing incessantly, recording everything. Kendra took a deep breath, then again. He picked up the cell phone with firm hands. The trembling voice had given way to something new, determination. Morning traffic was heavy on Ocean Boulevard in Long Beach, oblivious to the commotion that had just unfolded inside the Pacific Shore Bank Central Branch. A few pedestrians approached the large glass windows, curious, trying to understand why so many cameras were pointed at the interior of the branch. Inside, Mr. Harlan Whitaker adjusted his tie, satisfied, like someone who has just completed an unpleasant but necessary task. Behind the revolving door, Travis Keene, the security guard, crossed his arms and maintained a steady gaze, a silent challenge to prevent Kendra Hollis from trying to return. With her cell phone in hand, Kendra raised it slowly, making sure all the security cameras recorded the gesture. Her voice sounded calm, controlled, almost sharp. "Obedience," she said, loud enough to echo in the lobby. He dialed a number on speakerphone. On the other end of the line was the Human Resources Department at the bank's headquarters. Inside, Harlan paled. His tense shoulders betrayed the discomfort behind his authoritative pose. The morning sun streamed through the glass, bathing the bronze plaque behind the counter in light, the one bearing the name of Kendra Hollis, one of the Pacific Shore Bank Foundation's largest donors. On the floor, scattered papers and the perplexed faces of the customers painted a picture of disbelief. The red lights of the cameras blinked incessantly, like tiny metallic witnesses. Across the street, Kendra watched her reflection in the bank window, her disheveled sweatshirt, her unwavering gaze, her unwavering posture. Inside, Mia Langford finally moved. She bent down to pick up the documents with trembling hands. Victor Hale, still in line, watched the manager trying to restore order. Anger and shame mixed on his wrinkled face. Now inside her car, parked a few meters away, Kendra took a deep breath. Her chest still burned where Travis had twisted the fabric of her sweatshirt, but her hands were steady. She scrolled through her contact list until she found Lorraine Fisk, the bank's HR director. The phone rang twice. "Kendra, is everything all right?" Lorraine asked, her voice tense. "No," she replied calmly. "I need you to see something." As she spoke, she opened her phone's gallery and sent a series of videos. 3 different angles, all showing the same scene: the manager yelling, the security guard pushing her, and the woman being ejected from her own bank. The glint of the granite, the indignant voices, the flashes, everything captured. On the other end of the line, the silence was broken only by Lorraine's restrained breathing, who soon exclaimed, "They assaulted you in your own agency." "Keep watching," Kendra said firmly. The metallic sound of heels dragging on the floor and Victor Hale's muffled scream echoed through the speakerphone. "I'm going to destroy them," Lorraine said in a cold, precise tone. "I want names, schedules, badges, the entire chain of command. This will be investigated now." "The cashier's name is Mia Langford," Kendra replied. "She hesitated but obeyed orders. The security guard is Travis Keene, badge number 4472. I found out he's contracted by Apex Guard Security." Lorraine was typing quickly in the background. "I'm seeing the videos spreading. They're already on all the networks," she said. "The comments are harsh." Kendra opened her own feed and saw hundreds of shares. Outraged faces, hashtags calling for a boycott of the bank, headlines popping up every minute. The line beeped. "Derek Voss, line 2. It was the assistant's voice. "Put it on the conference call," Kendra ordered. Derek's deep voice, the legal director, joined the conversation. "Kendra, I just saw the videos. Are you hurt?" "I'm fine," she replied, "but we have a bigger problem. The deed signing for the land in Huntington Beach is still scheduled for today." "Oh my God," Derek murmured. "This could jeopardize the contract. The community has been waiting for months." "It won't compromise anything," she assured. "I'm already arranging a direct transfer from headquarters. We'll completely ignore this agency." Lorraine interrupted. "I just confirmed. Security guard Travis Keene isn't even our employee. He's contracted by Apex Guard Security." The sound of her keys continued frantically. "And the videos are going viral. Thousands of views. The press is already mentioning the bank's name." Kendra looked again at the agency's facade. Inside, she saw Harlan pacing hurriedly between the tellers, trying to appear in control, unaware that his fate was already sealed. "Let's get ahead of the game," Lorraine said firmly. "We'll block access to the agency. No one leaves until the internal interviews begin. Afterward, we'll release a public statement acknowledging what happened and announcing immediate action." "I agree," Derek added, "but we need to assess the legal liability." "No," Kendra interrupted emphatically. "No corporate caution here. They assaulted the director of their own bank inside one of our branches, and each and every one of them will answer for it, in broad daylight and before the entire country." Kendra Hollis started the car and pulled off the sidewalk with determination. "I'm heading to headquarters now," he said over speakerphone. "Lorraine, I want the interviews started within an hour. Derek, make sure the bank transfer goes through without a hitch." He paused briefly. "The community will not pay the price for this disgrace." 20 minutes later, the elevator doors opened on the executive floor of Pacific Shore Bank headquarters in Los Angeles. The sound of conversations ceased instantly. All eyes turned to her. Some with empathy, others with calculated curiosity. Everyone had already seen the videos. Her assistant, Gavin Reese, hurried over to her, holding a coffee and a tablet full of notifications. "Dr. Kendra, the compliance team is meeting in the corporate crisis room. Ms. Lorraine has requested your opinion on the draft of the public statement." Kendra's heels echoed on the polished floor, marking each firm step. The metallic sound brought back the echo of her shoes, dragging on the agency's granite, a reminder of yesterday's humiliation, but she brushed it away with a blink. Each screen in the hallway displayed frozen images of the incident: his face, the security guard's hand, the manager's gaze. The headlines rolled silently across the corporate TVs. Upon entering the room, Lorraine Fisk had already transformed an entire wall into a detailed timeline of the case. Security camera footage showed faces, times, and conversations. Next to it, a screen projected the flow of comments on social media, a whirlwind of anger, solidarity, and demands for justice. "The interviews have begun," Lorraine informed him, handing him a report. "Harlan is already claiming he was just following protocol, but we analyzed 6 months of his transactions. The pattern is clear. He selects low-profile clients for security reviews that never took place." Kendra flipped through the report, while Lorraine continued, "Here is the draft of the public statement. It acknowledges institutional failure, without leaving room for distortions, but we need to define the disciplinary measures." Kendra set the tablet down firmly. "One condition," she said coldly, "no retraining, no transfers, no resignation. Whoever made the mistake will leave with a complete and public record." He opened the emergency action form on his laptop. Fingers typed with speed and precision. The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of the headquarters, reflecting off the golden plaque bearing the name Kendra Hollis, Executive President. With one final click, he digitally signed the memo. "Tomorrow morning," he said without hesitation, "everyone involved will be offline." The following morning, the sun was still rising over the coast when Kendra parked in the reserved spot at the Long Beach Central Bureau, the same place where she had been humiliated. The granite and glass facade seemed cold and indifferent, as if it were unaware of what would happen there in a few minutes. Waiting for them were Lorraine Fisk, impeccably dressed in a dark suit, Tessa Blaine from HR, holding a stack of brown paper envelopes, and Royce Harlan, the head of corporate security, a quiet but imposing presence. "Is everything ready?" Kendra asked, even though she knew the answer. "All the termination documents are in order," Tessa confirmed, giving the envelopes a light pat. "The clauses include confidentiality and restriction of immediate access." "Do teams in position?" "Two, ma'am," Royce replied in a low, controlled tone. "Entrances and exits blocked. Everything under control." Kendra adjusted her blazer. No sweatshirt today. The same revolving door that had expelled her yesterday now opened gently before her, the cold glass brushing against her palm. The lobby fell silent. Morning light streamed in through the tall windows, turning the air into golden streaks. Customers have suspended their transactions. Behind the counter, Mia Langford froze, her hands still on the keyboard. Other cashiers pretended to work, but their eyes trembled. From the office emerged Mr. Harlan Whitaker, adjusting his tie. The same automatic gesture as always, the rehearsed smile, the blind confidence. He stepped forward, ready to begin his usual speech. "Dr. Kendra, I'm glad you're back to clear up yesterday's misunderstanding." But Tessa Blaine had already taken the initiative. "You won't need to worry about that," he said, handing her an envelope. "This is your notice of resignation, effective immediately." Harlan's mask of control has fallen. His hand recoiled as if the paper were burning. "What?" Lorraine Fisk responded sharply, projecting herself into the lobby. 17 violations were documented in less than 24 hours. Discriminatory conduct, misuse of force, and breach of internal protocol. She turned to the security guard, who was watching from a distance. "Travis Keene, hand your badge and access card to Mr. Harlan." The man's face paled. "You can't." "I can and must," interrupted Royce Harlan, stepping closer. "By direct order of the presidency." The silence that followed was heavy, almost solemn. The entire agency watched in disbelief as the power dynamic was completely reversed. The woman they had evicted the day before now ruled the room, and no one dared even breathe aloud. When Travis Keene hesitated, Royce Harlan simply stepped forward. He didn't need to say anything. His presence was enough to make it clear that there was no room for resistance. Mr. Harlan Whitaker, for his part, tried to catch his breath and regain control. He changed his tone with the desperation of someone who feels the ground disappearing beneath his feet. "We can discuss this reasonably, can't we?" he said, forcing a smile. "There's no need for such theatrical measures. I was just following safety protocols." "By refusing to check my identity?" Kendra Hollis questioned, her voice firm but low, forcing him to lean in to hear her. "By creating a public spectacle? By ordering them to touch a customer?" She stared at him with glacial calm. "You've mistaken this bank for your private club, Mr. Harlan. That mistake ends today." One of the customers was filming again with his cell phone. Others murmured words of support. "Well done. It's long overdue. Show them, Dr. Kendra." The energy in the room had shifted. The woman who had been humiliated yesterday was now in charge. Harlan's face hardened. "You'll regret this," he hissed. "I have friends in the press, lawyers, 20 years of experience. And everyone will receive detailed reports of your conduct," Lorraine Fisk interrupted, calm but sharp. "Including the pattern of selective account blocking you applied to black entrepreneurs. Do we want that included in the dossier as well?" Tessa Blaine made a slight gesture, and two of Royce Harlan's bodyguards approached. "Please escort Mr. Harlan to his office to retrieve his personal belongings. The rest, files, records, equipment, will remain here." One by one, the shutdowns followed. Mia Langford received her envelope with trembling hands, tears discreetly streaming down her face. Other employees were called to the break room, where they were informed of the layoffs. Travis Keane had to be warned twice about his tone of voice while emptying his locker. Throughout the entire process, Kendra remained motionless in the lobby, a symbol of why all of this was happening. The customers continued filming, but now the murmurs were of respect. Finally, someone did the right thing. Now that's justice. Harlan appeared last, emerging from the back with a cardboard box in his arms. His tie was crooked, his face red, his pride in ruins. "You're destroying careers," he growled, his voice trembling, "ruining good people for nothing." Kendra stared at him, her gaze serene, her voice sharp as a cold blade. "Good people don't need victims, Mr. Harlan, and they don't need to humiliate anyone to feel powerful." She pointed to the exit. "The same door through which you threw me out yesterday is open." The morning light flooded the lobby. One by one, the laid-off workers left the building. Some ran silently to their cars, others stopped on the sidewalk, bewildered. Harlan left without looking back. Travis Keane lingered a few seconds longer, staring at her through the glass, until Royce Harlan's mere presence compelled him to follow the same path. Kendra stood at the door, next to Lorraine, watching the faces disappear down the street. The same sidewalk where she had been pushed the day before now seemed solid, firm, almost symbolic. The windows reflected another kind of power, a power that was earned, not imposed. "That's just the first step," Kendra said quietly. "Now find out who taught you how to do that." The compliance and audit room at the Los Angeles headquarters was buzzing with tension. 3 screens dominated the wall, displaying recordings from the Long Beach Central Agency. Kendra sat at the head of the table, her face impassive. Her morning's victory already seemed distant as she analyzed the images. "This doesn't make sense," Lorraine murmured, typing rapidly on her laptop. "We're missing 2 important angles. The camera in the corner of the lobby and the one at the entrance. Both went offline exactly when you arrived yesterday." Derek Voss frowned at his own screen. "Cameras working before and after, but not during the incident? That's too big a coincidence." Royce Harlan, leaning against the door, crossed his arms. "The maintenance logs show no faults. Someone deactivated it on purpose." "And what about the account alerts?" Kendra asked, opening the terminal in front of her. "I want to know why my transaction resulted in a block." Lorraine expanded on a report. "Here, a random check alert was applied at 10:47 a.m., 3 minutes before your arrival. Derek let out a dry laugh. Random, and right in the president's personal account, minutes before a community investment transaction. That was sabotage, not randomness. Lorraine agreed, her expression closed off. And it's not an isolated case. Look at this. She rotated the laptop, revealing a spreadsheet. Rows and columns revealed a clear pattern. Same types of account freezes, always in the same situations. He pointed to a column. And always on the accounts of black customers or black-owned businesses. Kendra leaned forward, her jaw tense. If we confirm this, he murmured. It's already confirmed, Lorraine replied. The discrimination was automated. The silence that followed was not one of surprise. It was one of outrage. Kendra took a deep breath and looked at the screens. So, the cleanup that started today won't stop at the agency. It will go all the way to the top. The new findings have made the atmosphere thicker in the audit and compliance room. Derek Voss opened a spreadsheet and pointed to the screen. Automatic notifications generate blocks, require additional verifications, and apply cumulative fees, he explained in a deep voice. Look at the cascading effect. Delays in verification lead to delays in deadlines. Missed deadlines generate fines. Fines push accounts to the credit limit, and the limit is exceeded with even more fees. He shook his head, dissatisfied. It's a programmed drain, a system that sucks every last cent from those who need liquidity the most. A light knock on the door broke the silence. A pale, breathless young man appeared in the doorway, holding printed sheets of paper. I found something, said Theo Lang, junior IT auditor, his voice trembling. In the system's background code, I shouldn't have seen it. Royce Harlan watched him closely, assessing his nervousness. Everything's fine, Theo, Kendra Hollis reassured him, gesturing for him to come closer. Show me what you found. The young man placed the papers on the table. His hands were trembling. There's a hidden label in the metadata of customer profiles, he explained, pointing to a highlighted line. It's called image risk. Lorraine Fisk narrowed her eyes. Who has the authority to apply these labels? That's the problem, Theo replied, swallowing hard. There's no record, no mention in the official documents, but the implementation date coincides with the installation of the new regional protocols, 6 months ago. Before anyone could answer, Kendra's cell phone vibrated. One notification, then another, and another. Lorraine quickly picked up the printout from the table. Royce, I need a copy of Theo's security badge, she said seriously. Suddenly, a metallic beep cut through the air. The red LED on the young man's badge went out. My access, he stammered. They just blocked me, now! He tried to access the company's cell phone. Everything disappeared. All the logins. Royce Harlan was already at the door, checking the hallway with a keen eye. Someone is monitoring this room. Kendra's phone vibrated again, insistently. She unlocked the screen, and the atmosphere plummeted. He's from the Internal Affairs Department, he murmured. But the name, I've never heard of this man. Victor Slade, Special Investigator. A name that did not exist in any internal directory. She read the email aloud. Concerns regarding an attempted off-the-books withdrawal. Operational integrity under immediate review. Temporary suspension of board authorizations in progress. Kendra turned her phone towards the group. They don't even bother to hide it anymore. This isn't about the looting, it's about power. What's all this for? Theo asked, still holding the dead badge. Derek replied grimly, a hostile takeover. They want to destabilize the bank from within. Lorraine was already typing frantically on her laptop, cross-referencing organizational charts. Nodeda Victor Slade does not appear in any HR records, nor in the accounting department. No SSN, no registration number. Because he's not ours, Kendra interrupted, her voice now a wire of steel. He's theirs, the man who cleans up their footprints. She placed both hands on the table, staring at the documents and Theo's printed code. "Yesterday wasn't just to humiliate me," he said slowly. "It was part of a plan. They're trying to take over Pacific Shore Bank." The screens displayed incomplete recordings, synchronized glitches, and a digital pattern invisible to the naked eye. Theo's code was still there, printed, exposing the manipulation, visible even to anyone passing by in the hallway. Outside, someone was watching through the frosted glass walls. Subtle movements, shadows of people in silence. They relied on the protocols, on the system itself, to cover everything up. But they made a fatal mistake. They assumed Kendra Hollis would play by the same rules as them. They made a wrong assumption. "Lorraine, transfer everything we have to secure units," he ordered. "Derek, I want a full audit. All flagged accounts, money trails, approval chain, every name involved." She then turned to the young auditor. "Theo, are you willing to officially document what you've discovered?" The boy took a deep breath. The fear was still there, but something stronger was beginning to emerge. "They can block my access," he said firmly, "but they can't erase what I saw. I will testify." Royce Harlan approached, his expression serious. "You're going to need protection. All of you. They won't stop at digital surveillance." Kendra's gaze was fixed on the screens. On one of them, another black customer was being turned away by an automated system. "No, Royce, this won't end with reports or words." Her voice was icy and powerful. "It will end with names, evidence, and arrests." The hum of the lamps echoed across the table, casting harsh shadows on their faces. Lorraine picked up the desk phone and dialed Victor Slade's subscription extension. Silence. Then a silent signal. No voicemail, no active line. She calmly put down the phone. "That special investigator doesn't exist," he concluded, "at least not here." Kendra's gaze met everyone's in the room. "So it's official," he said coldly. "We're being hunted, but now they will be too." Derek Voss's fingers glided across the keyboard, his brow furrowed beneath the cold glare of the screen. "I'm checking all departments, all subsidiaries, even the outsourced ones," he said, "and there's no Victor Slade in our system. Not one." Royce Harlan approached one of the security terminals fixed to the wall. "Let me cross the entrance to the building." His broad shoulders tensed as he went through the previous night's records. "Here, I found it. Badge number 44, identified as C. Reese, used at 2:17 a.m. on the presidential floor, listed as an employee of Slade Security Group." He turned around. "That company doesn't exist either. I know all the suppliers that the bank uses." Kendra Hollis felt anger rising in her chest, her voice firm and restrained. "They are fabricating legitimacy, creating a trail of paperwork to justify whatever comes next." She picked up the laptop in front of her. "We need to block everything, audits, access logs, internal reports, before they tamper with more data." He quickly typed his credentials into the administration panel. The screen flashed red. "Access denied." Lorraine Fisk approached, stunned. "That's impossible. You're the president of the bank. Your level of authority is the highest." "It was," Kendra replied grimly. "Someone just cut me off from access. A contractor with administrative privileges that supersede mine." Derek turned pale. "They're already tinkering with the gears in ways we can't even see." Lorraine was typing frantically. "I'm pulling up the archived customer complaints. Maybe there's something there that can help us trace the pattern." Suddenly, she stopped, her gaze fixed on the screen. My God! Everyone drew closer. Page after page, the complaints surfaced in the same perverse pattern. Accounts flagged for random review, funds blocked, cascading charges, service termination or refusal. "Look at the addresses," Lorraine whispered. "Watts, Compton, South Central," completo Kendra, "all neighborhoods with predominantly black and marginalized populations." Derek started doing quick calculations on the tablet. just in fees and penalties, multiplied by all those bills over the last 6 months. He looked up, shocked. We're talking millions. Millions generated from systematic discrimination. Royce's cell phone vibrated. He checked and frowned. Security alert. 2 men have just entered the presidential floor. Their credentials state they are compliance consultants, but the badges were issued this morning. Before they could react, a new notification appeared on Kendra's tablet. Invitation automatically added to the calendar. Extraordinary meeting of the Board of Directors. Review of the President's conduct. Immediate attendance is mandatory. Lorraine exclaimed indignantly. They're not even trying to hide it anymore. They want to get rid of you before we can expose everything. We need to act now, Derek insisted. By the time they come forward with their version of events, it will be too late. No, Kendra interrupted with a sharp calm. That's what they're expecting. Panic. They're counting on our mistakes. He stood up slowly, adjusting his jacket. Lorraine, store these complaints on a secure external server. Derek, start discreetly collecting the transaction history for all the flagged accounts. We need proof, not assumptions. Royce, observe every move these consultants make. I want to know who they greet, which doors they open, and who they talk to. Theo Lang, still silent in his corner, timidly raised his voice. And what about me? They're going to come after me because of the code I found. Kendra stared at him intently. Go home, Theo. Take the day off. Say you're sick. Don't answer calls from anyone, except this extension. She looked at Royce. Make sure he gets to the car and gets out safely. And you, ma'am? Asked the head of security. Kendra picked up her cell phone and tablet, her gaze fixed. I'm going to my office. Let them believe they've cornered me. They want to play with my own protocols? Fine. But they've forgotten one essential detail. Which one? Lorraine asked, already knowing the answer would be a veiled threat. I wrote half of those protocols, and I left back doors that they'll never see. Kendra's heels echoed down the polished wood hallway of the executive floor. The soft lighting created reflections on the glass and steel walls. As Royce had predicted, 2 men in suits were positioned in front of his office, rehearsed smiles, confident expression, false authority. The tallest one held out his hand. Dr. Hollis, this is Victor Slade from the Ethics and Internal Oversight Department. We have a few issues to discuss. Kendra watched him in silence. His voice was controlled, his gaze superior, the perfect performance of someone who believes he has already won. They expected her to give in, to play the role of the nervous and emotional woman. Easy to discredit, easy to replace, but they didn't know who they were dealing with. The woman in front of them was not a victim. She was the architect of the system they were trying to use against her. And in that instant, Kendra Hollis realized the war had begun. The shorter man's smile widened with the feigned courtesy of someone who already feels in charge. May we come into your office, Dr. Hollis? The afternoon sun streamed through the large windows of the Pacific Shore Bank president's office, casting long shadows across the wooden floor. Kendra Hollis watched as the 2 men took their seats at her desk, each gesture studied, each movement calculated. They exuded the kind of authority that comes from the habit of solving problems for powerful people. Preston Quill, pleased to meet you, said the taller man, his voice soft, controlled, almost silky. This is Greer Voss. We represent the interests of the Board of Directors on sensitive matters. Greer took a small digital recorder out of his bag and placed it on the table with a precise gesture. Just to ensure the accuracy of the records, he said, with a smile that never reached his eyes. I understand perfectly, Kendra replied calmly, including the fact that none of you are authorized to be on this floor. Preston's laughter sounded rehearsed, empty. The council granted us temporary credentials given the exceptional circumstances. He opened a leather briefcase and activated a tablet. Incidentally, we need to review the incident that prompted this meeting. The video started playing. Images from the Long Beach Central Agency, but incorrect. Edited, manipulated. Kendra's voice came out distorted, harsh, threatening. "Don't touch me, you'll regret it." Meanwhile, Mr. Harlan Whitaker appeared as the exemplary, concerned professional employee. "Interesting edit," Kendra said, shivering. "Where's the full footage?" "This is the version circulating in certain media outlets," Greer replied, examining her painted nails with glacial calm. "The public narrative is developing rapidly." "Let's focus on solutions," Preston interrupted, changing his tone. "The council suggests a temporary separation, a mutual pause until we stabilize the situation." Kendra crossed her legs, her gaze fixed on the spot. "Just say it," he murmured. "The accusation without the euphemisms." Preston took a deep breath. "There are suspicions of an attempted, unauthorized withdrawal of a significant amount of money, followed by retaliatory measures against employees who were simply following protocols." "They followed protocol," Kendra repeated, her voice low and sharp. "Assaulting the CEO inside the bank itself. Assaulting is a loaded word," Greer pondered, sighing. "Perhaps if you had been more cooperative." The door suddenly opened. Lorraine Fisk entered determinedly, tablet in hand and eyes flashing with indignation. "Violation of policies 17.3 and 22.8 of the Internal Code," he announced without preamble. "The board cannot initiate an investigation without prior notification to the Compliance Department, and the President's authority can only be suspended by a full vote with the regulatory body present." She stared at the two lawyers. "Would you like me to cite any other articles?" Greer's smile had turned poisonous. "Ms. Fisk, your enthusiasm is remarkable. But remember, tone will also be scrutinized when regulators assess certain behavioral patterns." "Standards?" Lorraine retorted. "Allegations of a hostile work environment, discrimination against long-time employees." Greer shrugged. "The president's image isn't the best." A murmur rose from the street. Kendra walked to the window. Down below, on Wilshire Boulevard in Los Angeles, a crowd was gathering in front of the headquarters, half-held signs demanding justice and transparency. The other half, in a rage, shouted against the abuse of power by the progressive leadership. On a nearby screen, commentator Reed Harlan dominated the economic news. The doctored video played right next to his face. Internal sources at Pacific Shore Bank report instability in senior management, accusations of aggressive behavior and rash decisions by the CEO. At that moment, Derek Voss appeared in the doorway, his expression tense. He held up his cell phone. The stock chart was plummeting in real time. "Stocks are falling fast, Kendra." Preston leaned forward slightly. "Your actions have consequences, Mr. President. The council only wants to contain the damage." Before he could continue, Royce Harlan quietly entered and positioned himself near the door. Kendra's eyes met his. He touched the tablet and displayed the message. "Security system accessed remotely. Internal source. Cameras compromised." Kendra turned back to the lawyers, her voice firm and icy. "The damage began long before today, and it wasn't caused by me." On the other side of the glass, a glint reflected, a red dot flickering on the window, like the reflection of a lens or something more sinister. Greer Voss stood up, smoothing her skirt. "We will need your response within an hour. Voluntary cooperation would be more appropriate." "Especially for the council members who approve discriminatory policies?" Kendra asked softly. For a moment, Preston's mask slipped. Genuine anger. "Careful, Dr. Hollis. Even presidents can be replaced." Kendra gave a slight smile. "Yes, they can, just like advisors who violate their fiduciary duty." Greer stared at her, his voice cold. "Is that a threat?" Kendra answered without hesitation, her gaze fixed, her voice heavy with steel. "No, it's a promise." Kendra Hollis turned to face the two lawyers, her gaze firm and unwavering. "You have 30 seconds to leave my office before I call security." "The board won't allow that," Preston Quill began, raising his voice. 20 seconds. Royce Harlan stepped forward. His mere presence filled the room with a quiet authority. The lawyers paled, hastily gathering their papers. "This isn't over," growled Greer Voss, already by the door. "We completely agree," Kendra replied coldly. When the door closed, Lorraine Fisk turned around immediately. "They're setting a trap, Kendra. The doctored video, the fabricated investigation, the press coverage. It's all synchronized." "They needed a crisis," Derek Voss added. "Something to justify your removal before you could reveal what the whistleblowing system is hiding." Royce crossed his arms, his expression hardened. But they made mistakes. Digital footprints, remote logins, tampered cameras. All of that leaves a mark. Kendra nodded, watching the red dot dance again on the window, the reflection of a lens, maybe a drone, maybe something worse. "They forgot one thing about traps," he muttered. "Sometimes they catch the wrong prey." Down below, the noise of the crowd grew louder, a chorus of voices echoing between the glass and concrete of the Pacific Shore Bank headquarters. Meanwhile, in the audit room, Lorraine's team worked tirelessly, cross-referencing evidence, saving encrypted copies, trying to protect what remained of the system's integrity. But somewhere in the building, someone was still accessing servers they shouldn't have been. Someone who pulled the right strings and felt invisible. The cold lights of the underground parking garage hummed between the concrete pillars. 20:45. The red and blue sign of the neighboring diner flashed across the street, casting pulsating reflections on the parked cars. Theo Lang emerged from the emergency staircase, shoulders hunched, nervous gaze, step uncertain. He carried a brown envelope pressed against his chest. His dress shirt was wrinkled, his face tired. From where she stood, leaning against one of the columns, Kendra watched him intently. He knew Royce was hiding in the shadows somewhere between the cars. That was his specialty, being invisible until the right moment. "Dr. Kendra," Theo's voice faltered. He glanced over his shoulder. "Thank you for coming. The office didn't seem safe." "It's okay, Theo." Her voice was firm, yet calm. "You're with me now." His hands trembled as he opened the envelope. "I got this before they blocked my access." He took a deep breath. "The image risk seal, it's not just a marker, it's a whole system." He took out a stack of papers and handed the first one to Kendra. "No mole, it gets tangled up. De-escalation protocol, high-risk profile. The bank's corporate typography made everything more unsettling." As she read, Kendra recognized every line. It was a script, word for word. The same phrases that Harlan Whitaker had used against her. "We need to verify your identity. Please step away. You're causing a disturbance." "They trained the employees for this," Theo whispered, "to make abuse procedure, to provoke reactions that would then be used against the victims." Kendra looked up, her jaw clenched. "How long has this been in effect?" "Years," he replied, swallowing hard. "But there's more." He hesitated. "Someone was in my apartment yesterday. They didn't take anything. They just rummaged through everything, an overturned mug. My laptop was closed. They wanted me to know they could come in." Kendra grabbed her cell phone and started photographing each page. "We'll get you to a safe place." "It's impossible." His voice trembled. "My ID badge stopped working in the middle of my shift. When I tried to access the system, it said, 'User does not exist.'" He looked up, desperate. "How can they just erase someone? A soft noise cut through the air, the purr of an engine, a car pulling into a parking lot with its headlights off. Kendra's instinct screamed. She took a step back. And the customer data? Theo continued, confused. Fees, penalties, those were targets. They had quotas. It was planned. The car door opened with a click. Two men came out, light suits, neutral expressions, the posture of those who know they will be obeyed. Theo, the first one called, his voice echoing off the concrete. We need to talk about the documents you brought. Theo froze. The papers trembled in his hands. I didn't do anything. I didn't. Just hand us the envelope, said the second man, stepping forward. No one needs to get hurt. Back up, Kendra ordered, her voice sharp. They kept coming, without masks, without any hurry. People who didn't hide their faces because they didn't plan on leaving any witnesses. The first man stepped forward to grab the envelope, and a blur moved among the shadows. Royce Harlan emerged like a bolt of lightning, grabbing the assailant by the shoulder and throwing him forcefully against a concrete pillar. The impact echoed through the garage, the dry sound of a body against stone. The second man lunged at Kendra. She ducked, dodging by inches, her shoulder brushing against a car's rearview mirror. The envelope slipped from Theo's hands and slid across the floor, scattering pages like autumn leaves on the cold cement. The battle had finally begun. And this time, it wouldn't be fought in councils or emails, but in concrete terms, with power and truth at stake. The metallic clang echoed loudly in the underground parking garage. Give up, growled the attacker, lunging forward once more. You're only making things worse. Royce Harlan already had the other man pinned between two cars, but the fellow was fighting dirty, an elbow to the ribs, a headbutt to the back. The two grappled amidst the smell of gasoline and burning rubber, neither willing to give in. Theo Lang pressed the envelope against his chest and stepped back. His heel caught on a concrete block. He stumbled. The envelope flew out, the papers scattered across the oil-stained floor. Kendra Hollis lunged to catch them, but the second assailant grabbed her ankle. She reacted instinctively, a sharp, precise kick. The impact hit something solid. The man cursed and staggered. A car alarm blared, reverberating off the concrete walls. The sound seemed to multiply, deafening, and then, in the distance, sirens began to approach, growing in size, then suddenly diminishing, until they ceased. Royce landed a precise blow, but his opponent broke free, his nose bleeding. "Stop this!" the man shouted, breathless, but the other one was already retreating, limping, coordinated, efficient. The two returned to the car with practiced movements. "This isn't over," shouted the bloodied man before getting into the vehicle. The car reversed silently and disappeared into the night on Wilshire Boulevard, blending into the traffic. Kendra gathered the leaves with trembling hands, her shoulder throbbing. Royce quickly scanned the area before helping Theo to his feet. The young man's face was as white as paper. "They know where I live," Theo whispered. "They broke into my apartment. They went through my things. They wanted me to know they could come back." "No more," Royce said firmly. "You're coming with me now." Kendra gathered the last document, reviewing the pages. The de-escalation protocol, high-risk profile with the bank's header. Evidence of a hidden policy. Systematic discrimination, programmed to appear as routine administrative practice. The sirens started again in the distance, but stopped abruptly, cut off by someone who didn't want witnesses. "Dr. Hollis," Theo's voice wavered. "What are we going to do?" Kendra held the document up in the dim light of the parking lot. Harlan Whitaker's cold words printed like a manual for humiliation. She took a deep breath. "Let's do what they fear most, Theo. Let's tell the truth." A few hours later, the modern kitchen in Lorraine Fisk's Echo Park apartment resembled an improvised command center. Laptops, stacks of papers, and coffee mugs occupied every inch of the counter. The microwave clock was flashing 11:23 p.m., and the rain drummed against the windows, as if marking the rhythm of the tension. Kendra pressed an ice pack to her injured shoulder while Lorraine frantically typed on her laptop. The blue light from the screen reflected in his glasses, his fingers dancing across the keyboard. "Creating triple redundancy," he murmured. "Cloud backup, external drive, and a hard copy for the outside lawyer. They won't be able to erase that." Theo was sitting on the counter, holding an untouched mug of tea. He shuddered at every sound of a car on the street. Near the door, Royce watched the hallway, alternating his gaze between the peephole and his cell phone. On the workbench, Derek Voss spread out spreadsheets and bank statements, linking dates, values, and regions. "It's systematic," he murmured. "Look at this. Target neighborhoods, always the same customer profiles. The rates were personalized. They knew exactly who they were hurting." Lorraine held up a USB drive. "First, backup completed. Now for—" she began, but stopped when Kendra's cell phone vibrated on the table. She answered on speakerphone. "This is Kendra Hollis." The voice on the other end trembled. "Dr. Hollis! Is Lena Duval?" The name made everyone exchange glances. "The former cashier from the Central Branch?" Derek asked. "I need to tell you something," Lena said hesitantly, "about what Harlan made us do." The room fell silent. "You can continue, Lena," Kendra said calmly. "He trained us," her voice wavered. "He called it high-risk profiling. We had a checklist, what to ask, how to delay, who to schedule for verification. I knew it was wrong. I copied everything." "Do you still have that list?" Kendra asked immediately. "Yes. I kept it in my drawer. I picked it up today before leaving for good. I want to deliver it personally. I don't trust leaving it anywhere else." Lorraine silenced the phone and looked at the others. "It's late. It could be a trap." Royce nodded. "I'll do the collection. Neutral location. First, a full sweep." Kendra unmuted her phone. "Lena, can you meet me in 30 minutes? "Yes." "And, Doctor, I'm so sorry I didn't say anything sooner." "You're speaking now," Kendra replied firmly. "That's what matters." The call ended. As Derek returned to the spreadsheets, his expression darkened even further. These foreclosure records follow the same pattern. Black neighborhoods, family businesses, retirees. The bank was emptying entire communities and calling it risk management. Kendra rested her hands on the table. The ice was melting on his shoulder. Her gaze was that of someone who wouldn't turn back. "Then enough of the silence," he said, his voice sharp. "Tomorrow the whole country will know what Pacific Shore Bank has been up to. They weren't just discriminating, they were profiting from it," said Derek Voss, looking at the graphs on the screen. Lorraine Fisk responded in a somber tone. "Instrumentalized politics, a classic predatory practice disguised as an operational procedure." 40 minutes later, Royce Harlan returned with Lena Duval's checklist. It was just a crumpled sheet of paper, marked by folds and fingerprints, but it carried numbered instructions in cold, almost clinical corporate language. Derek placed the paper next to his spreadsheets. He compared dates, cross-referenced columns, and his hands began to tremble. Direct correspondence. He raised his gaze, his voice firm. The days on which these protocols were applied coincide exactly with the increase in abusive rates. Lorraine nodded. "Here is the missing link." She ran her fingers across the keyboard, scheduling an emergency meeting of the board of directors at 7:02 a.m. A pause, then a slight smile. "And I just received confirmation. The FDIC will call tomorrow at noon." Kendra Hollis took a deep breath. "Momentum," he murmured. "Now's the time." He turned his injured shoulder, moving closer to Lorraine's table. "I need to record something." Lorraine adjusted the laptop camera. The blue light from the screen illuminated Kendra's determined face as she adjusted her jacket, smoothed her hair, and began, "To all employees of Pacific Shore Bank, you know what happened. They watched the videos, heard the rumors, and witnessed the manipulation, but there's something they still don't know. Many of you have been forced to participate in a system of discrimination, trained to deny, delay, and discourage customers based on skin color. Some knew it was wrong. Others remained silent out of fear. I understand that fear, but now I ask for courage. If you have been silenced, I am listening. If you witnessed abuse, my door is open. This ends now, not with whispers, but with the truth." Kendra nodded, and Lorraine ended the recording. "Short, direct, and human enough," she assessed, already distributing the video through internal channels. Theo held the mug of tea, his face no longer pale. "Do you think it will work? That people will protest?" Kendra replied without hesitation. "Yes, they will, because we are offering something that Harlan Whitaker and the others never offered: protection and purpose." Derek gathered the evidence into organized piles: documents, reports, spreadsheets, and digital copies. Presentation to the board has been finalized. Regulatory bodies have been alerted. We have documentary evidence and direct testimonies. For the first time, we are one step ahead. A sharp sound cut through the silence. Lorraine's screen flashed. A new notification. Her smile disappeared. "What happened?" Kendra asked. "Someone just accessed Theo's home address in the HR records. Administrator access. But the login doesn't belong to anyone on our team." Theo's mug slammed shut against the saucer. Royce was already walking away from the door, cell phone in hand. Time to get him out of here. 4:45 a.m. The city was asleep. Los Angeles, still wet from the early morning rain, looked like a model of shadows and reflections. The streets were too empty, the lampposts too weak. The grey sedan from internal security drove silently down Sunset Boulevard. At the wheel, Royce Harlan kept a watchful eye. In the passenger seat, Kendra was checking messages on her cell phone. In the back seat, Theo Lang clutched the backpack containing all the hard drives and printouts. 5 minutes to the safe location," Royce said, without taking his eyes off the street. "Lorraine's team is already positioned there." Kendra nodded. A message from Lorraine flashed on the screen. "Heading to Diner Aurora. Meeting with Lena confirmed." Everything seemed to be going well. Too much, even. They turned onto a narrow street, lined with old mansions and high walls. Theo was breathing more calmly. He risked a small smile in the rearview mirror. And that's when it happened. A staggering figure appeared on the track. A man in a dark coat, his steps unsteady, his head bowed. Royce braked. He kept his distance. "This is strange," he murmured. "Very strange." Before he could open the door, the back of the car shook violently. The door next to Theo was ripped open with a bang. A second man lunged inside, grabbing the backpack. Theo shouted, "No!" Kendra turned immediately, grabbing the boy's collar and pulling him forward. The attacker's fingers brushed against the fabric of the jacket, but failed to grab it. Royce was already on the move. In a tight space, quick and precise, he struck the intruder in the face with his elbow. The man stepped back, but tried again. Theo became entangled in the seatbelt, struggling to free his body. "Get down!" Kendra shouted, grabbing him by the collar. The struggle intensified. The sound of fists and screams echoed inside the car. The breathing mingled with the distant hiss of rain hitting the asphalt, and out there, in the shadows of that silent street, the real attack had begun. The assailant's partner had already turned around. His hand reached through the open door of the sedan, grabbing the strap of Theo Lang's backpack. "No!" Theo cried, feeling the weight lift off him. Royce Harlan, still gripped by the steering wheel, contorted himself to reach the intruder. His fist struck the first man's chin forcefully. The sound of the impact echoed, metal, glass, and a muffled scream. Blood splattered onto the headrest. The second assailant violently snatched the backpack away. The handles gave way. He staggered but kept his balance, disappearing among the parked cars. The two vanished like shadows, quick, coordinated, professional. Suddenly, headlights crossed the street behind them. Royce floored it, the engine roaring. But the approaching vehicle was just a delivery truck, oblivious to the scene. Theo was trembling, his jacket torn, his gaze lost. "The drives," he whispered. "All the evidence." "No," Kendra Hollis said firmly. "That was the fake backpack. The real drives are with Lorraine. Remember? We swapped them at the apartment." Relief washed over Theo's face, as if air had returned to his lungs. Royce kept his eyes on the road as he quickly scanned it. "Is he injured?" "Just scared. Very scared." "They knew exactly where to find us," Kendra said, her tone sharp. "Which means we have an internal leak," Royce concluded grimly. Kendra's cell phone vibrated. Message from Lorraine. "Lena is safe. Documents are protected. Meeting room ready for 7 a.m. Kendra looked at the clock. 5:15 a.m. Less than 2 hours until the meeting that would decide the bank's future and hers. The hideout was a simple apartment above a closed bookstore in Silver Lake. 2 agents from Royce's team waited outside, coats open, weapons discreetly holstered. They escorted Theo inside. Kendra and Royce went straight to the Pacific Shore Bank headquarters. The sun rising behind the buildings of Wilshire Boulevard tinged the sky with gold and grey. In the executive elevator, the silence was thick. Royce stood motionless in a guard position, his knuckles bruised and purple. Kendra, impeccably dressed in her suit, adjusted her collar and took a deep breath. She had already faced humiliation, threats, betrayals. This too shall pass. The doors opened. The director's office floor was teeming with a tense silence. Quick footsteps, averted glances, hurried paperwork. Kendra walked down the hallway, Royce 2 steps behind. Her hand touched the doorknob of the meeting room. "Dr. Hollis." The voice came softly, politely, and laden with venom. Preston Quill was standing in the hallway, accompanied by Greer Voss. Behind them, a man in a brown uniform held a bulky envelope. "This isn't the time for your meeting," Greer said with an almost friendly smile. "But since you're here..." The man took a step forward. "Dr. Kendra Hollis, you have been notified." The envelope felt heavy, like lead. Kendra opened it calmly. "You didn't need to read it to know the content. Temporary suspension of administrative powers of the executive board." The black and white letters carried the weight of a sentence. Through the glass wall, she saw Landon Greer, a member of the board, and until yesterday her ally. He looked away, fixing his gaze on the coffee. "Please sit down, Dr. Hollis," Greer said compassionately. "The lady is not in charge right now." Kendra clutched the paper between her fingers, her face unwavering. The sun streamed in through the window, casting long shadows on the glass table. Preston Quill and Greer Voss seemed to own the scene, cold and calculating. Behind them, other council members settled in, whispering amongst themselves. "I prefer to stand," said Kendra, her voice as firm as steel. "Leia." Preston's smile faltered. "We don't need to dramatize it." "Read it," Kendra repeated. "Since you're so proud of the paperwork, read it in front of witnesses." The hallway began to fill with people, executives, lawyers, assistants. Royce positioned himself discreetly behind her. Preston cleared his throat. "By order of the Central District Court of California and pursuant to Section 223 of the Federal Banking Act, Ms. Kendra Hollis's executive authority is suspended pending the conclusion of the investigation." Kendra's phone vibrated on the table. Bottom, Lorraine Fisk. She answered on speakerphone. "Sim, Lorraine?" The voice on the other end was breathless. "Are you at the meeting?" Lena didn't show up. Employees at the Aurora Diner said that no one saw her arrive. Her cell phone goes straight to voicemail. The room fell silent. Kendra's eyes narrowed. The air around her seemed to freeze. Something terrible had happened, and this time it was no longer a corporate maneuver. It was a personal attack. Greer Voss's perfectly serene expression wavered for a moment. Preston Quill's fingers drummed once on the table and then stopped. "Where was the last place Lena was seen?" Kendra Hollis asked. Lorraine Fisk's voice came through the speakerphone, steady despite the tension. The cameras show her leaving the apartment at 4:30 in the morning. After that, nothing. She disappeared between there and the Aurora Diner. Landon Greer, the advisor who had remained silent until then, looked up from his coffee cup. His pale face betrayed more than he wanted to admit. Kendra stared at him for several long seconds, long enough to make him look away. Royce Harlan stepped forward, cell phone in hand. The temporary employee badge was used during the night, issued by a vendor account authorized by... He turned the screen around. The logo at the top belonged to the administrative department of the council itself. An absolute silence filled the room. From the hallway, an almost inaudible murmur, "Ah, that's circumstantial," murmured Preston Quill, forcing a smile. "And it is completely irrelevant to the ongoing process." Kendra placed the tablet down on the table with a sharp click. His fingers slid across the screen to a document he knew by heart, but never imagined he would need to use. Pacific Shore Bank Bylaws, Clause 9.4, he announced in a clear voice. "Anyone here want to take a guess as to what she covers?" The door opened, and Derek Voss entered, breathless. "Kendra, that's the nuclear option." "Great," she replied, turning the tablet towards those present. "Emergency Governance Protocol." Reading had drained the color from Greer's face. "In the event of compromised executive access or systematic violation of compliance controls, any employee may request immediate independent oversight." "You can't do that," Greer exclaimed. "I can, and I will," Kendra interrupted, her voice firm, almost solemn. "The clause requires the FDIC to assume direct control within 1 hour, no appeals, no delays." Preston stood up, the veneer of calm crumbling. "This is madness. The board won't allow it. The council has no power whatsoever. That is precisely the purpose of Clause 9.4.4, to prevent you from using the regulation to cover up corruption." She picked up the phone. "Lorraine, call the Financial Ethics Committee now. Tell them that Pacific Shore Bank is invoking Section 9.4 with evidence of internal interference and a whistleblower who has disappeared." "I'm dialing now," Lorraine replied. Greer's heels echoed hurriedly across the floor as she tried to get closer. Royce moved quickly, blocking his path. His presence was a silent wall. "Do you understand what you're doing?" Greer hissed. "It will drive down stock values, destroy careers." "Great," Kendra interrupted, her gaze hard. "Perhaps this way the banks will think twice before attacking their own president for being black and causing trouble in the wrong branch." She went out into the hallway. The group of employees gathered there silently made their way through. Kendra picked up a pre-filled emergency form from her desk. All that was missing was the signature. The pen glided across the paper with deliberate calm. Each stroke was a promise, for Lena, for Theo, for each customer harmed by the verification fees that conceal discrimination and illicit profit. "The regulators are on their way," Lorraine informed us by phone. "They are invoking emergency powers. They are going to confiscate all systems and records." Kendra looked through the glass of the meeting room. Preston was shouting on the phone. Greer typed frantically. Landon remained motionless, staring at his own reflection. "Perfect," said Kendra. "Start by looking at the council's supplier records. I want all the information about the recently issued badges." She signed the document and handed it to Royce. "Take this directly to the regulators. They'll need it to assume jurisdiction." Amid the chaos, raised voices, hurried footsteps, mixed orders, Kendra turned to Lorraine and murmured, "Call the FDIC now." The Security Operations Center was fully operational. The screens displayed dozens of cameras and real-time data streams. Royce accessed the traffic system while Derek tracked Lena's cell phone. Last signal detected, Sunset Boulevard, corner of Wilshire, 4:47 a.m. Kendra leaned forward, her heart racing. Continue. She turned left onto Melrose Avenue, then headed toward the back of the Aurora Diner, Derek said, zooming in on the images. On the screen, the grainy video showed Lena's silver Honda taking the turn. The brake lights flashed once, and then nothing. The next image made Kendra hold her breath. Lena Duval's car was parked crookedly, occupying 2 spaces, with the driver's side door open like a broken wing. The camera footage showed 4:52 a.m. "Play it back," Kendra Hollis ordered. The recording showed a black SUV arriving seconds after Lena. 2 figures emerged from the booth. Quick, precise, rehearsed movements, the kind of efficiency that can't be learned through improvisation. Suddenly, the camera spun sharply, pointing towards the sky. "They repositioned them remotely," Royce Harlan growled. "The same access pattern we saw on the branch cameras." Kendra was already on the move. "How long will it take us to get there?" 8 minutes, if we take the side roads," Royce replied, already grabbing his keys. "Lorraine, coordinate with the FDIC. Say that we have a potential attack on a whistleblower." "Derek is already calling the LAPD," Royce confirmed. They went down in the executive elevator to the garage. The corporate security SUV signaled as Royce approached. The engine roared as soon as he turned the key. The sun barely touched the tops of the buildings when they left Wilshire Boulevard, the tires screeching on the wet concrete. Royce drove with controlled composure, weaving through the light, early morning traffic. Kendra watched the signs go by outside the window. Melrose, Sunset, Santa Monica Boulevard, the heart beating in sync with the sound of the engine. The cell phone vibrated. It was Lorraine, updating the progress. "The police are 5 minutes away. The inspectors are asking you to wait." "No way," Kendra interrupted. "We're almost there." The back alley of the Aurora Diner appeared ahead, narrow, surrounded by brick walls and faded graffiti. A delivery truck blocked almost the entire passage, its white body reflecting the morning light. Behind him, Lena's silver Honda, motionless. "Wait," Royce said, braking as Kendra went to open the door. A man emerged from behind the truck. Dark clothes, latex gloves, and in her hands Lena's purse swinging like a trophy. Before Kendra could react, Royce was already in action. He leaped out of the SUV like an arrow, his feet barely touching the ground. The man saw him and ran, dropping his bag. "Find Lena," Royce shouted, disappearing around the corner. Kendra's gaze swept across the alley. Nothing, only the steam from the ventilation outlets rising like a living mist. Then a faint noise, something scraping against metal. Behind a row of trash cans, Kendra approached cautiously, her heart pounding in her temples. Lena was there, huddled between the containers, her wrists red, the duct tape still hanging from her. Wide eyes, trembling lips. "You're safe now," Kendra said, kneeling down. "We protected you." I did it," Lena whispered. He pulled something out of his sock, a crumpled piece of paper, damp with sweat. "The checklist. I've kept it hidden since training." He said that image risk meant delaying clients until they gave up. The sirens were already blaring. Royce came running back, sweaty and breathless. "I lost the man at the construction site, but I took pictures. Too professional to be a coincidence. He's on some supplier's records." Police cars stormed into the alley, their lights flashing red and blue. While the forensic team was on their way, Kendra took photos of the list and sent them to Lorraine. Minutes later, the answer came. "That's right. Patterns, schedules, customer profiles, everything matches. This proves systemic discrimination." Back at Pacific Shore Bank headquarters, Kendra attached the list to the growing dossier. Fake badges, camera tampering, assaults, attempted kidnappings, and now the written test. He sent the complete material to the FDIC Supervision Department. A notification appeared on the screen. Regulators are on their way. Preserve all systems. Kendra stood up. Her reflection in the window showed a tired yet steely face. Royce appeared at the door with the car keys. "Let's go to the agency," she said, "before someone tries to delete it." The sun was already high, turning the windows of the buildings into mirrors of fire. Outside, a growing crowd surrounded the entrance to the Pacific Shore Bank. Posters, cameras, voices demanding answers. Everything would come to light. But before any press conference, before the speeches, they needed to ensure that the truth survived. Kendra touched the scar on her knuckles. He remembered the cold floor, Harlan Whitaker's disdainful look, that public expulsion that had ignited the flame that now engulfed the country. None of that was in vain, and she wasn't finished yet. So much had changed, and so much was still changing. Royce Harlan held the door open as Kendra Hollis walked across the lobby with firm steps. Behind them, Lorraine Fisk was coordinating in real time with the FDIC prosecutors, while Derek Voss was performing system backups on the remote servers. The machine was in motion, a cog in the machine of justice that was finally beginning to turn. The streets of downtown Los Angeles were still almost empty. Delivery trucks crossed the silent intersections, the asphalt reflecting the cool blue of the dawn. The SUV stopped in front of the Pacific Shore Bank's main branch, a glass and granite building, reflecting the sunrise like a dark, cold, and still mirror. "Lorraine, are you online?" Kendra asked, putting the phone on speakerphone as she got out of the car. "Yes," Lorraine replied, her voice trembling. "I'm monitoring the internal cameras. Derek already has remote access to the server room." Royce scanned the perimeter with the gaze of someone who had anticipated ambushes before. "The main entrance is secure. We'll use the employee access on the east side." Kendra nodded, following him around the corner. The weight of the security badge in my pocket seemed greater than ever, a physical reminder of everything that was at stake. They needed to save both the physical and digital records before someone deleted them. Suddenly, Royce raised his hand. "Wait." He pointed to the small LED above the card reader. The light was flashing green when it should have been solid red. "There's someone inside," Kendra whispered. "Multiple heat signatures," Derek reported over the speakerphone. 3, maybe 4 people moving around." Royce pressed the radio to his chest, but Kendra grabbed his arm. No time. If they were there, they were destroying evidence. He stared at her for a moment and then nodded with a firm gesture. "Stay behind me." Kendra's badge slid into the reader, emitting a loud click that sounded almost like an alert. The side door opened. They entered silently close to the wall. The air smelled of metal and burnt paper. From some point further on, steel drawers were banging together loudly, and a muffled voice echoed, "Hurry up with those boxes. We have to take everything out before the woman speaks." Kendra and Royce exchanged a quick glance. Turning the corner revealed the scene. 3 men, 2 men wearing dark clothing and work gloves, carrying boxes from the filing department, and a third one, unmistakable, Travis Keene, the former security guard for the agency, now wearing a black sweatshirt and with a hardened look. "Well, well," he mocked with a sharp smile. "Look who's come to spoil the party." "Stand away from the boxes," Royce ordered, drawing his baton firmly. "Or what? Are you going to fire me again?" Travis laughed, pulling a manager's card from his pocket. "Too late for that. But there's still time to make you fall with me." He twirled the card in the air, bringing it closer to the safe's keypad. The other 2 men moved in sync, ready to react. "Last warning," Royce said in a deep voice. "On the ground, now." The response came in the form of a coup. Travis moved forward. Royce dodged by a hair's breadth. The baton ricocheted off the attacker's forearm with a sharp crack. One of the men attacked him from the side. The other went after Kendra. She crouched behind the counter, listening to the dull sound of bodies colliding. Furniture flipped over. The windows broke. The sounds of fighting echoed throughout the floor. Travis, limping, still tried to reach the safes panel. Kendra saw the movement and reacted. She ran to the emergency panel next to the ticket counters. "Code red! Security breach!" he shouted over the loudspeaker. Sirens blared from the ceiling. Red lights began to flash, casting shadows on tense faces. Travis turned around angrily, but Royce intercepted him with a shoulder charge that sent him flying against the filing cabinet. The metallic thud echoed through the hall. The automatic steel doors began to descend, one by one, sealing the building. It was the parent company's emergency containment protocol. The two accomplices retreated, dropping the boxes and fleeing towards the side exit. But Travis did not back down. He lunged at Royce again. The two went through the vault door, the same door that, seconds later, it slammed shut with a deafening bang. Now they were prisoners. Kendra ran after them, keeping low to the ground amidst the clanging of metal and the muffled sounds of the fight. Inside the narrow corridor of the vault, Royce and Travis exchanged brutal blows, fists, knees, panting breaths. Each impact echoed off the steel walls like war drums. And deep down, at the very edge of darkness, the emergency lights flickered above the stacks of files and documents, the treasure that so many tried to destroy, and whom Kendra had sworn to protect with her own life. A sharp crack echoed as Travis Keene's head hit the concrete floor. He staggered, but did not fall, blood trickling in rivulets from his nose, his gaze filled with blind fury. Another armored door slammed shut with a bang, then another. The heavy sound of steel locking together surrounded them, confining them to ever smaller sections of the corridor. And then, footsteps, several, running. They came from the back of the agency, where the server room of the Pacific Shore Bank headquarters was located. The sound echoed like an approaching subterranean thunderclap. Travis's bloodied smile broke into a crooked, victorious gesture. "Reinforcements," he murmured, spitting blood. The last security door slammed shut with a deafening bang, sealing the place. Kendra Hollis and Royce Harlan were trapped next to the vault, along with Travis, isolated from both the escape route and anything that might approach. The red emergency lights flashed at regular intervals, tinting the hallway with a vibrant crimson hue. Everything seemed distorted, the reflection of the metal, the echo of breaths, the fear mixed with adrenaline. Kendra stepped back until she felt the cold of the safe against her back. The vibration from the alarm system made the metal vibrate under his fingers. Royce repositioned himself in front of her, baton in hand. Behind me. The shadows moved. 3 figures ran down the corridor, and under the red strobe light, Harlan Whitaker's face appeared distorted by rage. The former manager, once impeccable, now had the look of a man consumed by hatred. A heavy backpack swung from his shoulder, jingling with each step. Behind him, 2 outsourced security guards dressed in civilian clothes, tense faces, hard eyes. "Your ridiculous legal maneuvers!" Harlan shouted, throwing his backpack to the ground. The metallic sound echoed like a hammer blow. "Did you really think paperwork was going to save you, Kendra?" He laughed, his teeth stained with blood. "Everything burns, even paper." Kendra stood firm, her heart racing, but her voice cold. The steel corridor was less than 5 meters wide. No way out, no escape. Royce stepped forward, but Travis hit him from the side with a violent blow that threw him against the wall. The baton slipped from his hand and slid across the floor. The 2 men grappled, struggling for dominance in the confined space, bodies colliding, muscles tensing, breath ragged. Kendra stepped back, her hand groping until she found one of the metal row supports, those red velvet lampposts used in the lobby. In one swift movement, he yanked it from the ground and spun it around. The impact hit Harlan's shin hard. The man roared in pain, staggering, and the force of the movement caused him to hit his face on the control keypad of the safe door. The cracking sound of the plastic rippling echoed down the hallway. Blood trickled from his nose, splattering onto the buttons. "Destroy the servers!" Harlan shouted hoarsely. "Open the fire valves and drown everything." One of the accomplices ran to a red valve on the wall, manual activation of the server room suppression system. That jet of pressurized water would erase everything, including the evidence. But above them, a security camera continued recording, its small LED flashing non-stop. Everything was being captured, every face, every act, every crime. The sound of sirens began to pierce the air, not just one, multiple, coming from various directions. Panic flashed before Harlan's eyes. Travis and Royce were still fighting, crashing against the walls. One swift strike, a precise elbow to Travis's abdomen. He recoiled, panting, and fell onto a metal box. The accomplice reached the valve and began to turn it. The pipe shook. The sound of water rising through the ceiling was a harbinger of destruction. "It's over!" Kendra shouted, her voice cutting through the air like a blade. "The LAPD and FDIC officers are already here. There's nowhere left to run." And as if his words possessed prophetic power, the last door in the hallway burst open violently. Preston Quill showed up there, the council's lawyer, the wrinkled suit, the pale face. "Get down!" he yelled, his voice high-pitched. "Everyone on the ground!" Behind him, LAPD agents entered with their weapons drawn. "Police, hands where I can see them. Now." The accomplice near the valve froze and raised his hands. Travis released Royce, stepping back with his arms raised, his chest heaving. Sweat and blood mingled on his face. Harlan turned his head in despair, looking from side to side, like an animal trapped by its own trap. The roar of sirens now came from both inside and outside the building. The metallic sound of weapons being unlocked filled the corridor. Kendra watched, motionless, as the men who had tried to destroy everything. Now they trembled under the very laws they had violated. Harlan Whitaker turned the emergency exit door handle in desperation. He pulled, pushed, and punched. But the Pacific Shorebank security system had already sealed all the doors. There was no escape possible. "On your knees now," ordered one of the LAPD tactical unit officers. "Hands on your head." Harlan turned slowly, his face alternating between anger and disbelief until it completely blanked. Blood trickled down his chin, staining the torn collar of his suit. When he knelt, the dry sound of the handcuffs clicking shut echoed down the hallway, metallic and definitive. Under the red lights of the emergency, the steel gleamed like new blood. Kendra Hollis watched, motionless, as the man who had publicly humiliated her was led away in handcuffs. For a moment their eyes met, his filled with impotent hatred, hers serene, unwavering. The support post slipped from his hands and rolled slowly across the floor, its hollow sound almost swallowed by the alarm. His hands trembled slightly, not from fear, but from the remaining adrenaline that was beginning to dissipate. Royce Harlan approached, standing beside her, solid, silent, protective. Outside, sirens and engines. New LAPD vehicles arrived, followed by news vans. Microphones, cameras, and screams filled the air. "Forensic team requested. State Banking Supervision Department on site. Federal authorities are on their way." Voices on the radio mingled with the noise of the alarms, and the flashing lights now seemed slower, like heartbeats, a reminder that the truth, sooner or later, always finds a way out. In the main lobby, cold fluorescent light reflected off the granite and the uniforms. Dr. Elena Torres, director of the California Department of Banking Supervision, advanced with a calm yet relentless demeanor. His understated gray suit contrasted with the controlled energy that dominated the atmosphere. Technicians labeled servers and hard drives, photographing each entry. Kendra pressed a cold compress to her shoulder, standing with her team. Lorraine Fisk, Derek Voss, Royce Harlan, Lena Duval, and Theo Lang. They formed a small circle exactly in the same spot where the humiliation had begun days before. Lena's hands were still trembling, but her gaze was steady. Theo watched the police activity, his face tense but determined to stay. Elena Torres's heels echoed on the floor as she approached. He held up an official document bearing the state seal, his voice clear and sharp. Kendra Hollis, pursuant to Section 9.4 of the Pacific Shore Bank's Charter of Incorporation and State Banking Regulations, I am assuming emergency supervision over this institution. The words echoed through the lobby, accompanied by cameras that recorded everything. D. In light of evidence of systematic discrimination, fraud, and attempted destruction of records, this agency and all systems of the Pacific Shore Bank are now under state control. Outside, the crowd grew larger. News vans lined up, antennas erect, drones hovering above the building. The crowd cheered as the police officers brought Harlan Whitaker and Travis Keene, handcuffed, to the patrol cars. Harlan's once immaculate suit was now soaked with sweat and blood. Travis, dressed in ordinary clothes, looked diminished, his face pale under the incessant flashes. "The images speak for themselves," Lorraine murmured, showing live videos of the arrests on her tablet. "No cuts, no manipulation. The whole country is watching." Elena Torres turned to the assembled employees. "This agency will remain closed until the investigations are concluded. Everyone will be heard, and any employee who has witnessed discriminatory practices should come forward now." A tense silence filled the lobby, until a young cashier raised her hand, then another, then another. The voices, previously silenced, were beginning to emerge. Royce stepped forward and handed a flash drive to the principal. "Images from the safe. They show everything. The assault, the orders, the sabotage. A forensic technician received it wearing gloves and sealed it in a package. Everything will be analyzed and recorded." Derek Voss added, "There's more. The evidence shows that the discrimination was coordinated across multiple branches. It wasn't an accident. It was internal politics." Elena confirmed with a quick gesture. "The headquarters council is being placed under immediate intervention. You should accompany them." Kendra dropped the cold compress and lifted her face. "I go." Royce tried to intervene. "Let me go in your place." "No," she replied firmly. "They tried to erase it on paper. Now they'll see it burn in front of the cameras." At the Pacific Shore Bank headquarters, a few hours later, the chaos was controlled and methodical. State auditors dismantled civil servants, collected files, and took depositions. In the meeting room, Elena Torres presented irrefutable evidence, forged emails, discriminatory risk policies, and orders signed by top management. Victor Langford, sweating under his jacket, couldn't look at the screens. "Who created the exclusion system?" Elena asked. "Who authorized the attacks on the whistleblowers?" He hesitated. His eyes turned to the empty chair at the head of the table, Vivian Reese, founder of the bank. Langford's voice broke. "It was her. She said we needed to protect the family legacy. The idea that new money was a threat. She created the filters, the profiles, the blocks. Doors opened. 2 officers entered, leading Vivian Reese in. Even handcuffed, she maintained a rigid posture. But the gaze, once haughty, now exuded cold fury. "Vivian Reese," Elena Torres announced, "you have been officially removed from the board and are under criminal investigation. Submit your credentials now." "You don't have that right," Vivian shouted. "This institution belongs to the depositors." Kendra stepped forward. "Not to your private club. Preston Quill and Greer Voss were brought in next. Their corporate masks finally come off." Greer was crying. Preston stared intently, plotting his next lie. The afternoon sun painted the sky orange and gold when Kendra Hollis walked to the Notary Public Central in Los Angeles, 3 blocks, each step a liberation. In the waiting room, merchants, community leaders, and members of local churches, the same people who had been denied due to reputational risk, they stood up when she entered. The documents were waiting for her at the counter. 3 city blocks of historic properties, now transferred to the Community Land Trust. Protection against gentrification, a space to rebuild what prejudice tried to erase. She signed it, firm line, without hesitation. Then he held up the document in front of the cameras. The flashes illuminated her face. The repairs begin today. The words echoed through the hall, and for the first time in a long time, justice and hope shared the same space. Not just punishment for the guilty, but reparations for the injured. Not just the end of a system, but the beginning of something worthwhile in its place. If this story touched you in any way, let us know in the comments where you're watching it from. Your comment helps strengthen this community that believes in justice and new beginnings. Take this opportunity to leave a like. It shows that these stories matter. And subscribe to the channel to follow the next chapters. New stories are on the way, each with the same truth, intensity, and emotion.